Inside your bedroom, we stopped counting the days, lost in the rhythm.
Woo! Hey, hello! In today's video, we are talking about all of the projects I will be releasing in 2024. I am super excited about these projects. I keep talking online and in all of my previous YouTube videos, I keep talking about how this is a new era, and I'm gonna fully explain what that means, and I think you guys will see what that means when I start talking about the projects that I'm releasing in 2024. So hang tight. We're gonna get into all of it, all the 3 books that I plan on releasing in 2024. First, before we get too far into it, I wanna talk a little bit about my Patreon. If you didn't know, I do have a Patreon. You can find it in the link below. And on my Patreon, there are 2 different tiers. There's the early tier, the Alderians tier, which is $3, where you get early information. So before I make announcements like the publication date of these 3 books and other things, it goes onto my Patreon first. So for $3 a month, you can get early access to all kinds of information on my Patreon. For $5, the Guardians tier, you can get access to short stories. Bob, do you want me to turn it back on?
Yeah, don't turn it off.
Okay, I'll turn it back on. We're gonna have to find a new filming location. Pause for reset. All right, we're back. Where was I? Right, Patreon. So let's restart. For $5, the Guardians tier, you can get access to short stories. I also post early drafts there. So there is actually a full book that you can read right now on Patreon for $5 a month. It is the early draft of Winter Witches. So when I wrote that book last year, I released it chapter by chapter a day. So for $5, you can go read that entire early draft. And I do stuff like that with my Patreon with that tier a lot. And I'm planning to up my game and do a lot more of it. So check out Patreon down below. So on to the books that I am releasing in 2024, and we're gonna start in order of release day. The first book I'm planning to release May 21st of 2024 is the vampire romance called Curse of Wings and Darkness. Now, I love this book. It picks up a story that I've already kind of written. It is not connected at all to the Guardians of the Six Gate series, but it does follow Angel Ramirez, who appears in book 2, Shade of the Shadowlands. He was super interesting to write when I wrote Shade of the Shadowlands, and I ended up actually writing more of him into that book because I enjoyed it so much. So I decided very quickly after I wrote that book that I wanted to write more of him. I just didn't know what it would look like. And as we got closer to finishing up the Guardian series, I kind of came up with this idea because I wanted to write a book that was much more grown up. I wanted to write more of a new adult book. I wanted to write more sexy things. I knew I wanted to write a vampire book, and I wanted to write a vampire book that was very different than a lot of the other vampire books out there. Like we went through this stage with Twilight where the vampires are very sexy and they glitter and whatnot, and they're the most beautiful people you've ever met. And I wanted to write a story where that was in part true because you needed an allure to the main character, but I wanted to go back to more of a traditional vampire story. So I read a lot of vampire lore in 2023. I read Dracula. I read all kinds of mythologies out there, and I came up with kind of a combination of all of that to create a vampire that was grotesque in the way that vampires were way back in like their origin. And so Angel Ramirez's vampire story, while it is very sexy and I love this story, there's a lot more, I keep using that word, there's more sex in this one. There's a little bit of spice for sure to the romance. It also covers some hard topics like anxiety, there's a piece about mental health in there with anxiety. The main character, Lily, has severe anxiety. And so we go into what panic attacks look like and some of that with her life and how it doesn't come about in the ways people expect. Like people with anxiety are not they're not fearful of things that like a lot of people would expect people to be fearful of. So things where that should set them in, I say should, that would set a lot of people into a panic do not for some people with anxiety. So that comes through a lot in this story. And the vampires in general in this story are not these like super beautiful creatures. The vampires are similar-ish in a way to Serpent and the Wings of Night. If you've read that book, the story is not. It is still an urban fantasy book. So I cannot wait to tell it to you. You know, I've been talking a lot about what elements of this story. Let me tell you a little bit more about what this whole book is actually about. So I gave you the backstory a little bit about the characters. Lily is the main character. The book is told from Lily's point of view, and the book picks up with her. She is just finishing out the semester at college. She goes to NYU, and she is anxious because it's going into finals week. She's really nervous, and she gets back to her super nice apartment, and her high school friend is her roommate, and she convinces them to go out. She says, let's go out. Let's see if we can hook up with some people out at the club, because there's a club around the corner from them, and Lily goes with her. So they go to the club. Lily gets there. Lily doesn't get out a lot. Lily doesn't date a lot. She's kind of a novice at it, and she very quickly runs into a boy that she had met earlier that day after her class let out. And she's a little bit intimidated by him, but he's really attractive. She kind of likes him, and she decides, just like, I never do this, let's go for it. So she talks with him a little bit more, and things go south very fast at the club. Things happen afterwards, after she meets up with this guy, and she ends up in danger. And who happens to be there to swoop in but Angel Ramirez? And things happen that are just otherworldly, and she can't comprehend, and she spends the next days trying to work out exactly what happened, because she doesn't remember a lot of it, and a lot of it seemed unbelievable. And so she works through what happened and what happens next. So from there, the romance blossoms, things pick up, and it becomes apparent very quickly that beyond vampires, there's other things happening here. Like, why is Angel in New York City when he was in the Midwest? He was if you remember, we last saw Angel in Colorado before he left. Why has he come out here? What is it with this over 500-year-old vampire where he's traveling around these random places in the country, outside of the country even? Why is he landing in these different places? And why is Lily suddenly having these really strange dreams and the same dream over and over and over? So we start to get into the supernatural elements amid this relationship blossoming, and it's just a really exciting story. The romance is great, and it's going to be the start of a new series, and I cannot wait for you to find out more of Angel's story, because there's more there that if you've read Shade of the Shadowlands, I think you can work out. But it becomes an exciting adventure for the both of them, full of supernatural things, vampires, witches, all kinds of stuff along the way. And I cannot wait to get this book out there. The next book I am releasing, I think in September of 2024, is the Trials of the Goddess series with, I had to think about the title for a minute. Oh my gosh, forgot it for a second. Trial of Flame and Wings. Super excited about this one. All right, I keep getting tongue-tied. This story is similar to Serpent and the Wings of Night, except there are dragons involved. There's also an arranged marriage. There is a trial for marriage, sort of like in Brave. Think arranged marriage, but the main character steps up to challenge everyone for her own hand. Love the main character. The main character is Ren, and she is a princess in Honor Cove, the Kingdom by the Sea. And this is much more of a true fantasy book. It is set in a completely separate world where there's the light realm and then there's the dark realm. And all of it has to do with mythology. So all of it has to do with how this kingdom and how the world was founded by a goddess and two gods, and their story dictates how this entire world was founded. So Ren has been trained her entire life for this day, and she's been trained in secret by her tutor so that she could win her own hand in marriage and hopefully usurp the throne from her father and her brother, who are vindictive and who are tyrants ruling this kingdom. So she's trying to come in for her own people, win her own hand in marriage so that she can then have a right to the throne that is not dictated by who she marries, so that she can have power on the throne. So that's where this picks up. She secretly enters this trial, and her and a bunch of other men go and they have to compete, fight to the death. The last man standing gets to marry the princess and gets a shot at the throne in an honor cove, essentially. So she goes into this trial. It is dictated by the goddess Arya, and Arya sets up the trial. So after she submits an offering to Arya, magic happens, essentially, and suddenly everyone that is entered into the tournament is tossed into an entirely new place, and they have to fight their way back to Honor Cove in hopes that they can have a shot at the throne and marry a princess. And so that's where the story starts with this trial. Lots of things happen. There is a couple romance plots in here. It is going to be the start of a new series. Like I said, there are dragons involved, and a villain romance, and enemies to lovers. That's what it is. Enemies to lovers romance with Ren. And basically the story is the start of her journey trying to bring about justice and democracy to some degree to her kingdom where it has not seen it, and it's a bloodthirsty kingdom. And I am really excited to start this story. I have not written it yet. I have outlined it. And so this is another one that will have a bit of spice to it. It's going to be very, very much a slow burn that takes place over several books as Ren discovers a whole new world, essentially. She's grown up in the light realm her whole life, and through the trial of marriage, she gets to go on a new adventure, and that leads her on an adventure with magic and dragons and things that she never expected to ever encounter in her whole life. And it's really exciting. Ren is a fighter. I really like her spirit. She's a different character that I haven't written before. She's similar to Kenna Riley in the arena in that she can hold her own, but she is a little bit more like Katniss Everdeen in Hunger Games in that she's not necessarily a likable kind of person. She's not one that people gravitate towards, other than the fact that she's this beautiful princess and she's got a lot of things attached to her that people want. And this is just a fun story, and I cannot wait to write it and jump into dragons. Gotta love dragons, and an actual fantasy world. So be on the lookout. I mentioned Patreon earlier. One of the first things coming to Patreon this year is part 1 through 10. I think it's 10 of this book. So I've already written out the parts. This book is split into several different parts, and each one starts with a part of the mythology of this world. So if you subscribe to $5 to the Guardians Patreon tier, the very first thing you'll get in January is the parts of this story, which are explain the entire mythology of this world. So check out Patreon below. The third and final book coming, I think, December 10th to publishing that I'll publish is the next book in the Interconnected Winter Romance series. So this will be Margot's book. I've already picked the title. It is Frozen as Friends. It is a best friends to lovers romance story, and it follows Margot. If you've read Winter Witches, then you know a little bit where Margot leaves off. She's had kind of a traumatic, really tragic incident happen that has basically put all of her life goals on halt. And she's having to figure out, where do I go from here? She's coming to terms with the fact that she has wound so much of her identity in soccer, in her future of being a professional soccer player. And now she's having to take a look at herself and see, I am more than this, but what is this? And she encounters somebody she hasn't seen in years. And it's somebody from high school. They kind of went in the same circle. They were sort of friends through school because they were both athletes. And he very quickly kind of helps her find a place in the world again, as she's trying to figure out who she is and what she can do outside of soccer. And this person, this boy, is very successful in his own athletic career, very, very successful. And so because she's thriving to be around that again, she attaches herself to him and decides to help him out because he needs help a little bit with some of his athletic goals while they're all celebrating the Christmas holidays at home. So they kind of build a pact together, sort of a, you help me do this and I will help you find your way again. And I already said it is a friends to lovers plotline. It is a rocky one though. And there's a lot of self-discovery. What do you, like, it's a really fun book. I'm in the middle of writing it. My goal is to finish writing it in January. And it's been tough because it is definitely a coming of age story in that it's finding your way in the world, especially when things go wrong and things don't go as expected. And I love those kinds of stories. But since I took time off in December because I am also reinventing myself just a tad, it was a little bit of a hard start because it starts in that kind of a rough place. So I cannot wait for you guys to read it though. Go read Winter Witches. It is out if you have not already because it sets you up a bit for the story. You can read them all separate, but Margot's story picks up where Winter Witches leaves off. And I cannot wait for you to read more about Margot. She's the middle Sinclair sister. She's much more down to earth than Madison is. Madison is your classic, like Starbucks pink, Taylor Swift loving girly. And Margot is much more, like comfy sweatpants and sweatshirt, realistic kind of girl. And I really love her for that. We have a lot in common just personally. And I cannot wait for you guys to read her story. So that is a little bit about all of the books I'm releasing in 2024. I'm super excited to start this journey. Some of these are really early in the works, like Trial of Flame and Wings, especially the fantasy book with dragons, very early in the works. So there are some details that might change. I know I didn't give you guys a ton to go off of, especially with that story, but if you like Serpent and the Wings of Night, but dragons, you would love this book. So keep in the know by following me. Click the link below, follow me on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube here, give me a like below if you are interested in any of these books. Leave me comments with your questions if you have questions. I cannot wait to release these books. Like I said, they're gonna be much more grown up. A lot more spice, especially. Love that. And I cannot wait, just cannot wait to get these books out and to start a brand new year of publishing. So I hope you guys are interested in knowing more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.